Well, I have been hard at work. My gosh, it's been a busy week. I have been working on the VPforce Rhino Monster on the assembly. A massive big shout out to Winger. It's not Winger's creation, but it is Winger's revision of the VPforce Rhino Monster. He's done a lot of mods to this. He has strengthened areas. He has done all sorts of stuff for cooling, put an exhaust fan on it. So there's a lot of love and extra work that's gone into making the VPforce Rhino Monster kit from Winger as special as it is. Now, something else that's really cool, you'll see in the build video shortly, he has also modified for me my base plate. Normally the base plate has two upright supports. One side has 3 screws and quite a long extended support. The other side normally has 2 screws and maybe 3/4 of the size of that support. He's reduced that for me and just allowed 1 screw to go through because I am also running, well, I'm not running them just yet, but I will be in a future video, the larger 74 tooth cogs. So really cool. Winger's prepared to make those sorts of changes and really give you a bit more of a bespoke service. So if you are thinking about getting the VPforce Rhino Monster from Winger, just take that into consideration. It might be worth requesting that so that you can have those cogs for a future upgrade without having to replace that base plate. Okay, so lots to talk about, and my gosh, I've tried to make this video as short and as sweet as I can. It is a build video, so there's a fair bit going on. If you're not interested in all that stuff, you can skip to the relevant points. There'll be timestamps in the description. And look, I've tried to be as detailed as I can, and I guess take you on that journey of me building this base together. There's a few little things that I've come across, a couple of little things that I didn't realize initially, and please know this, the instructions that come with this base, they're really more of an overview guide. There were a few little pitfalls that I came across along the way because what's really expected is that you are looking at the original design plans for the VPforce Rhino Monster because assembly is very similar. So it is worth just getting your head around all that stuff first before you dive in, but it's pretty straightforward. I reckon if I wasn't making a YouTube video, I could have done that base and the power pack probably in about an hour and a half, 2 hours comfortably. A few tools that you need I show at the beginning, the crimps and a few other bits and pieces, but this is an incredible kit. It is absolutely awesome. I encourage anyone out there that's thinking about getting a VPforce Rhino to consider the Monster from Winger, or if you've already got the VPforce Rhino and you're just wanting some extra horsepower, this is definitely worth a watt. And now a quick word from our sponsor for this video. I'm assuming if you're watching this, you're into flight simulation in one way or another. And Say Intentions, ATC, it's AI, air traffic control for Microsoft Flight Simulator 2020, 2024 and the X-Plane series, and it is absolutely awesome. If you're looking to elevate the immersion in those simulators, look no further. Say Intentions AI is going to give you that real air traffic control feel. We've got a couple of different subscription models. You can even try it for free for 24 hours. It is a really cool package. I love the way you can interact with it. You get handoff, you can radio ground for runway taxi. It is really cool. A few times when I've been coming into land, you've literally got to go around because there's a commercial airliner coming in and landing where you want to. It is really cool. So if you're looking to increase immersion in the simulators that you love flying in, Microsoft Flight Sim and the X-Plane series, look no further. Say Intentions AI ATC, I never fly without it. Let's get into the video. This is the build video of the VPforce Rhino Monster, and then right at the end, we're actually going to test out the force of the stick and compare that against the OG VPforce Rhino. Let's go. All right, it is Rhino build day. I've printed off the instructions. I will put these in the description, and I'll also put on screen as we're stepping through the instructions what the relevant points are. There's a fair bit going on, and gosh, I would have had to have put the camera so far back to see everything, but for the most part, got a few tools here. We've got a rubber mallet. There is a skerrick of rubber left, so that'll get the job done. Got a little bit of Loctite, and I probably recommend blue. You don't want to do anything too aggressive on something of this size. A few extra tools. We've got our mini screwdriver set. I've also got my electronic screwdriver set. Got some Allen keys. Although there are Allen keys in this set as well, I recommend for tightening up and loosening off, you always just manually do that first. You don't need these, but I've got some wire strippers because there is a tiny little bit of wire stripping needed. Got some crimps because we will be crimping a few terminals. What else have we got here? Bits and pieces for the assembly. So we've got the cables, the USB for the circuit board and motors. That is the circuit board that came with the kit. I'll show you where that gets installed inside of this. Coming over to this side, we've got the screws and various bits and pieces. And as mentioned, everything's really nicely labeled. Case screws, motor mount. That's the belt. Okay. Now I did get extra belts and extra cogs. These are the 74 tooth cogs. You can request these from Winger and he will print them and supply the relevant belts. We're not installing those today. This is going to be the standard Rhino Monster build with the 60 tooth cogs. Putting it on the axis, which you're going to be pulling back and forward on, which I'm pretty sure is the Y-axis, that probably makes more sense because you're going to get a lot more force in the pull as opposed to wanting to increase force in the side to side because that can get quite tiring. But we'll test that out in a future video once we get this all up and running. Here are the little cogs for the motor spline, so they will fit onto the motor. There is a little grub screw in these, and if you just have a look here, we can actually just see the grub screw there. That's what the Loctite is going to go onto. What else? This here. So this came included in the kit. I asked Winger to print this for me. And so what is this? Well, this here is actually a cover for the power pack. So here is the power pack itself. And it's a little protective cover that will actually go over the power pack there. And then this is where we can install the rocker switch. The power cable can come out of there. And then all of this stuff here is protected. Now, look, the purists out there would tell you that really this should be metal. It shouldn't be plastic because if you have some kind of short, this could catch on fire or melt. Yeah, look, I don't have the ability to get that made in metal just yet, but we'll see how we go with this. This is going to be installed in a cabinet below the 6DOF simulator anyway, so it shouldn't be an issue. Again, included screws are taped to there, and that's the mounting screw for the rocker switch. We'll go through the assembly of this shortly. Okay, what else have we got? There's the rocker switch itself. Will also be in the description. We've got some fork connectors. And I am actually going to be extending the power cable, which is here. So I'm going to be extending this power cable because I want to be able to quick connect and remove the force feedback base. But the actual power pack itself, this here is going to be mounted quite a distance away from this base, and I'll be doing videos on all of that stuff in the coming months. However, I wanted to be able to have this off the rig and mounted away from where I'm setting everything up. So I've purchased another 3 meters of 12AW cable. I don't think the voltage drop will be an issue. If it is, I'll increase the gauge, but then I'm going to extend this cable with a Deutsch connector. So if you don't know what a Deutsch connector is, you would have seen these sorts of things, no doubt, on your car. Automotive plugs tend to come like this. It's pretty much what a Deutsch plug looks like. And they're really good. They're waterproof, not that we need it to be, but putting that in the right way. There we go. But once these connect together, they seal really well. And look, for the money, I just really like the way these connect. And I've also got some cable sheathing. So this sheathing here, you basically expand the sheathing and then it tightens around it. And then you can use a little bit of heat shrink to seal it off. First of all, we want to remove the base. Now, we'd already undone the screws from last time, so it's pretty simple to undo. We'll take that off there. We'll put this to the side. And then this front cover here gets removed. Now, again, everything is really nicely labeled. So it's pretty clear that that needs to be removed as well. So we're just going to remove that front cover there. Okay, so we'll leave this protective cap on the top here. I think that's handy just to keep all those connections safe and sealed. Okay, so let's now flip this up and have a look inside as to what we've got going on. Everything is nicely labeled. This is labeled as negative. That's labeled as positive. Most of these are keyed, so they can only go one way, and the way they're pinned as well. So something else that Winger touched on, which is really cool, is the emergency stop here. So actually got a little quick release latch here, and this is epic because the mounting screws for the circuit board for the motors gets installed just in here. And you can actually press down on this little white, on that little white latch there, and then look at this, the emergency stop removes. Now, maybe those of you out there have seen these kind of emergency stops before. I haven't. This is my first time. And this is so cool. The way it removes, I think, is genius to enable us to get into that space to install everything we need. And we'll get stuck into the instructions. So, point 1, take off bottom and front lid, labeled with stickers. Both will only be attached using 2 or 3 screws. That was correct. Okay, point 2, mount the main board to the main board mount found underneath the front lid and fasten it using the 4 screws that are already loosely in place on the main board mount. Okay, so that is these here. That's the screws just in there. So we're going to grab the Allen keys. Yep, they're not too tight either, so pretty easy to remove those. Now that I've removed one, I'll just show you. So that's one screw out. We'll get the other ones out. Okay, that's the last screw. Now we can get our little circuit board. And I showed in the previous video, but the autofocus was playing up on me. But you can actually see there, that is the circuit board for the motors. Alrighty, so it needs to be mounted with this row of connection inserts facing this way because these cables here, they connect into it, and Winger has already terminated these correctly so that they'll fit straight into there, and then you can nip them down. That can go right there, and I love it. He's got all these little heated nutserts that have been pressed into the 3D print. So I'm actually going to put a little bit of Loctite on these screws. Unless you have a motion rig or you're doing some pretty extreme stuff in your sim rig, I don't think you need to. This might be overkill, but this is going in a 6DOF simulator, and if you've watched any of my previous videos, you know that things can get pretty wild. So I reckon just a little dab of Loctite is probably not a silly idea. Okay, now we'll just nip these up. Not too tight, we don't want to break anything, and this is not really doing anything too crazy apart from being the circuit board. I'm happy with that, that's installed. All right, let's have a look what we've got. Mount the motors inside the case, replicating the image, figure 1, using the included M6 motor mount screws. Make sure the motors are rotated inside the housing as shown in the image. This is important because wrong rotation might result in inability to properly tighten the belt tension later due to the cables hitting the outer walls. Man, these have got some weight to them. I'll tell you what, they are awesome. I can see the cable just there, which is exactly what we've got there with this cable here. So we're going to make sure when installing this that that is facing that way. Okay, all right. So we might actually just put this on its side now we know which direction it needs to go. So we're going to get this installed up into here. This is the mounting hardware here for the motors. Now we might use a bit of Loctite on these. Okay, we don't need too much, but it's just to try and minimize anything coming loose from bouncing around in the sim rig. Let's have a look here. Second motor can go in. Okay, so let's inspect this one. This one has the wires facing up towards this motor here. So we're going to have those wires there facing up that way, so towards this motor here. There we go. Needed to come down from the top. Okay, so we'll just rest that there for a sec. Not too much. And we can already see what's going on there. So we've got the ability to actually shift the motor back and forward and then tighten it up to get tension on the belt there. So for now, we're just going to leave that as is. Let's have one last look inside to make sure, have we actually done this exactly as the instructions are telling us? So we've got this motor with the cables going in that direction, this motor with the cables going in this direction towards this cog. Yep, that all looks correct. Attach the included 15T metal pulleys to the motor axles following the image in figure 2. When putting the 15T pulley on the motor axle, make sure the grub screw is placed so it rests on one of the flattened positions of the axle when tightened. So yeah, these are keyed. You can actually see it looks like it's got 2 keyways. I just positioned that there. You can probably see it's machined there. So it's got a position on either one of those. Definitely use some Loctite to keep the grub screws in place and avoid the pulley from starting to slip. attention. If the pulley goes on tight, use a plastic or rubber hammer to get it on. Make sure not to slide it down too far to avoid getting in trouble aligning the belts. And that makes sense, because if that's really tight and we're trying to put that on and we push it too far, it's going to be pretty hard to get it back. Not impossible, but yeah, easier to give it a light tap to go further on than it is to pull it off. Oh, I've just noticed something. Okay, so there's actually 2 grubber screws. I'd missed that until just now. So yeah, be mindful of that. That is why there are 2 flat machine surfaces there. Unscrew the black 3D printed protective cover and connect your grip extension. All right, make sure to properly and carefully connect your, I feel like that's really jumped a step ahead here. So point 5 is really stepping us to connecting the grip extension. Make sure to properly and carefully connect your mini DIMM connector 7. Connect your electronics to the main board following the diagram shown in figure 3. Well, I feel like I don't want to mount my grip extension on there just yet. Kind of want to do the electrics first. It's strongly recommended to crimp some wire and ferrules to the cables to ensure proper connectivity. The cables that come included in my kit are all pre-crimped. Let's actually connect the power cables, because we are a while off getting our stick connected there. We have got the circuit board in a position so we can start connecting stuff together. Let's now have a look at our wiring diagram. Okay, so now we are going to connect the fan header first. That's connected into that first one there. We are going to connect the final fan there, right at the end of assembly, because that is actually on the front cover itself with the fan plug. Right, now we are going to connect the first programmable dial. So that is this one here. Okay, so we're going to connect that one. All right, that one's connected. And then we've got the other multifunction rotary dial there. So we'll now connect that one just there. There we go. That one's connected. And they're all keyed. They can only go one way, and they're all a different number of pins. So it's really hard to make a mistake here. We can now probably connect the negative here to the circuit board. So we need to have a look down in there and actually see what is negative here. So that is going to actually be this first one here is negative. So we'll get our little mini screwdrivers out, and we're just going to back that off. I'm pretty sure they're all already backed off enough anyway, but we'll just wind that out a little bit more there. A little wiggle and a jiggle. That should go in there nicely. Here we go. That's in, and we'll just lock that down. Don't want to go too tight, but you do need a reasonable amount of resistance there so that that cable can't come out. And then we've got the other connection there. Now, I love what Winger has done here. He has crimped and terminated those, so they are ready to go. That one needs to go into here for the emergency stop. There we go, that's in nicely. Now we've got the, what's this one? This is a 5-pin. So this is the grip SPI. Yeah, okay, so that's the 5-pin mini DIN, which is what I use for my Virpil grip. So that one there is going to be connecting to, so it's just connecting to that one down in there. There we go, that's connected. Right, what's next on the hit list? We've got the USB. We might as well get that connected, and that's this here all coiled up nicely. Okay, now what we've actually got is a couple of screws just where we can release this little tiny restraint which will hold the USB in place. We're just going to release that off. Okay, there it is. So we've just backed that out, and that is for the USB, and it's going to sit in that restraint just like that there, and then we can screw that to the wall, and that actually helps retain it. You can just see there how it actually retains it into that bit. And that is the USB connected. Now we will connect the plug to the main board, and that's a 4-pin, and that is going to this little plug here. There we are, she's connected, and that was to that point there. We can just get that all tucked out of the way. Now there are some included zip ties in the kit, so we can actually zip tie all this up nicely once we're finished. But let's have a look here. So now we've got to connect the motors. These go to the motors as well, so we might actually get these connected and ready to plug them in. However, I think we might have uncovered our first little complexity. Oh yeah. Okay, so I actually think we might need to pull this motor out, because really connecting up to this bottom motor here, I think is going to pose a bit of a problem. So let's have a quick look and see, can we get to that bottom motor? Oh, it's going to be tricky, isn't it? Look, I think for ease of installation, while we're at this stage, we're going to quickly pull this motor out so we can get the connections onto the bottom motor here. Okay, really quick, back these off. Pull back that off real quick, and with any luck, we can slide that out. Okay, now let's bring this back up. You can see we've got these connections that we need to get on there. So, and this one is going to connect straight up into, that's the first one in, and then the second one. Those are both connected. Now, let's have a quick look here and see which one goes to what. So this one goes to motor 2. This one, on that first one there, goes to motor 2. So let's have a quick look at which is in motor 2 from our chart. Okay, it doesn't state on the document which is motor 2, which is motor 1. I don't think it matters. Let's have a quick look here. All cables except for the power cables that come with the XT60 connectors minus and the emergency stop switch plus are bespoke and cannot be connected wrong. The two main fan connectors do not matter which one goes where. To make sure you don't mess up polarity, plus and minus are labeled with stickers, which they were. After wiring is complete and nothing happens. That's really talking about us accidentally having, or actually in shipping, the emergency stop button is probably depressed. Okay, so I don't think it matters about motor 1, motor 2. No, there's nothing about a motor 1, motor 2. So we're going to connect this to this motor down here. Okay, and I'll show you on the motor really quickly. That is where we're going to be connecting this little connector. And then you can see that we've got the power type connectors that connect onto this one here. It should go straight into there. We are going to connect this plug while we're down here as well. And again, these can only go one way. Here we are, that's connected as well. We'll just loom those up the top there. All right, so we can actually get this one back in now. Make sure we've lined those up with those two flat surfaces. And so that's going to be this cable here needs to connect down into there. Okay, we'll just make sure that's pressed down and in. Yep, that one's locked in. And then we'll connect this connector here. These here need to have connections crimped to a couple of these little ferrule connectors. And I'm going to quickly cut the cable or strip the cable, I should say, and then we will crimp the end. Now we'll just check which one it needs to be here. Get it on there. And done. All right, we can now connect these to their respective locations. So let's have a look at our chart. Okay, so blue is going to go to this first one here. So we will just get down into that little spot, slide that in there, and we'll just tighten that. Yeah, that is nice and tight. Okay, we've got this connection here. We'll go into the next one. That's in there. Okay, we'll just tighten that up. And nice, that one's all done. And then pretty much the same again. So we've got the blue cable heading up into that one there. Make sure that's in, and we'll screw that up. Nice, that one's in. I'll just check that that one was screwed down enough. Yes. Okay, and the last plug. Well, it's not really a plug, is it? I guess it's a connection. Let's get that into there, and we'll screw that down. Okay, that is pretty much wiring done, except for the remaining fan, which we'll put on last. So now we'll get the zip ties. We'll give a bit of a tidy up in here, and we can then start working on tightening up the motors. Okay, the zip tying is probably the trickiest bit, to be honest. All right, get all those in there. Oh, see if we can just shear them down. Beautiful. There we go. Not too tight, just enough to make things tidy in there. If you go too tight with zip ties, you can actually damage these little thin wires. I found that out by mistake. Okay, so that's nice and out of the way. What else do we need there? Yeah, we might just tidy that lot up just there. So we'll get another one around there. There we go. That's nice and out of the way. We'll just snip that off. That's looking pretty good. We've got to get the emergency stop back on, so we'll just move that wiring out of the way. Little wiggle, little jiggle. We'll just make sure that that bottom cable is out of the way, and that just snips back on there. Gosh, I like that. I've never come across emergency stops like that before, but you know, I haven't really mucked around with a lot of emergency stops before, but that is cool. All right, let's now turn our attention back to the motors and getting all of that stuff configured correctly. Okay, so let's work on this first motor here. We'll just back off these screws a little bit, just so we can adjust the belt and make sure everything is where we want it. Okay, so can that slide? Yes, it can. All right, let's get out the belts for the 60T. Okay, now we've got two different size belts here. So for the side cog, we're going to want the longest belt. There we go. And with the motor bolts just loosened off, Should just be able to get that in position. Now we want the belt to be nice and straight on this cog. Let's make sure everything is lined up nicely. That looks pretty good. We just need to make sure that everything is adjusted correctly. I reckon that can come up just ever so slightly. Okay, so we'll just need to back off the grub screws there. It's looking pretty good, that grub screw. Now I've really just done this by eye, and I guess the proof will be when we start to use the stick back and forward if the belt wants to walk off the cog. Just nip tight, there we go. Okay, so that's looking pretty good. We just need to get some tension on that now. So we'll swivel this and then actually just get a little bit of pressure on that belt there. And we just then do these up. There we go. That's looking pretty good. We can then just tighten that up a little bit more snug. An Allen key. There we have it. That is our first belt on there. Now that's cogging. The software takes care of that. So don't, if you're new to the VPforce Rhino system or these sort of motors, don't stress out. We take that up to there, plonk that on there. Really easy to put the belt on actually. And yeah, that's looking good. Might just eyeball that from the side. Yeah, that's looking pretty good. Getting some tension on the motor there. Actually from the center shaft, there's probably a good way to get tension with the motor nice and even. Don't need a huge amount of tension. This isn't doing crazy revolutions. It's really only moving through a short range of motion on that axis. And then we will just nip tight a few of these. Belt is on. Let's flip her up. We'll turn it on a bit of an angle here, so hopefully you can get both in shot. And now don't worry about the cogging. As I said, it's very normal until the motors turn on and the circuit board does all that magic. And they're working. That's working really good. I reckon it is time to put the back plate on, or actually the front plate, and we can connect this very last fan. So we'll just flip this back up one more time, and just buried down in here is where we need to be for our fan. Oh, wouldn't you believe it? It's actually under the emergency stop button, but we can remove that really easy. So we just pop that off, those cables out of the way. There we go. That is a really cool feature. I like that. Okay, fan goes up the top here. This is keyed. This goes down into there. We got that one in. If you've got big fat fingers like me, I like to just use something, either the Allen key or a screwdriver afterwards just to make sure it's locked in. Okay, we can get the emergency stop back on. We can probably just tuck this cable down and out of the way. Just make sure that there's nothing that's going to get caught or binding on anything, and that looks good. And it is tight. Needs a little wiggle and a jiggle, but there we go. That is together. So we might get a couple of mounting screws in that. Just really quickly power. That's those. We're ready to put the base on now, and you can tell which way it goes because we've got 3 mounting holes on the side here, but we've only got 2 mounting holes on this side here. And if you look at this plate, we've actually got 3 on that vertical brace, and we've only got 1 there. So this 3 is going to line up with this side here. So let's get the plate positioned, and we'll actually just slide it down and in, and we'll wiggle and a jiggle, and that is almost together. It's a nice snug fit, so you might need to give a little tappity tap. There we go. So we can get some screws on this side here now. Now spin it around, and we can put the screw in this side. I'm just going to quickly check the side covers here. Now, something to be aware of with the side covers is Winger is going to be drilling and putting little tiny heated nutserts like this in here. So at the moment, the version I've got has these little adhesive sticky pads. Anyone buying these going forward, it's actually going to have these nutserts in there, so these will screw on. Now what I'm going to do, which is actually what I did with my original Rhino, the original Rhino does not come with any holes to mount anything, but it is made of wood. And so I'm actually going to drill these and then very carefully drill out and then screw into the 3D print, the PETG, and I will screw that on. We are going to flip this over. Now this is where it gets a little bit tricky because I don't want to stand it on its head, but I've got all of these screws that I've got to put in here. So we're going to quickly do that. My recommendation with the covers is don't mount these until you have got everything dialed in. Let's now turn our attentions to the power supply unit. Winger, I asked him to, he's 3D printed me the PSU cover. I'm sure he would do the same for anyone out there who wants it. This will probably be an extra charge, but it's a beautiful little bit of kit. We've got the screws sticky taped there. We've got the mounting screw for the rocker switch there, and here is the rocker switch. Nice and simple stuff. It's taking that standard 3-pin connector. Don't forget though, something very important, depending on your country of origin, is the voltage switch in there. So I'll see if I can get that to focus, the different voltages based on your country. So make sure when this arrives that it is set correctly before you do anything. This rocker switch, I've noticed that it's actually got this extra piece here, and you'll see what I mean. Although we'd pull that screw out first, but if we just roughly size it up in there, like so, you can see that we've got a fair bit of overhang. Now, depending on how you're going to mount this, that might not be a problem piece there, but I'm actually going to cut that down with the Dremel once I've installed it. But that's how the rocker switch goes. And then basically this can slot over there and it covers these terminals, and the included screws allow it to screw to the side there. So what it's giving you is a nicely finished end to the power supply unit, so everything's pretty safe. You can't accidentally touch anything there and get electrocuted, which wouldn't be ideal. Yeah, I mean it's reasonably safe, but you got to remember that when you plug a cable into that, you have got 240 volts coming out of that, or based on your country, that voltage that's going to kill you if you touch it. So yeah, I think this cover is a good idea. And I might look at in the future getting a metal cover for it to protect it as well. But this is going to be mounted down in the base of my 6-off motion system, out of the way, and it's not going to be on the rig moving around and getting any vibration. Then this is the XT60 power plug, and you can already see, we just bring this back into shot. We've got the XT60 connection there, so that's where that plug's going to go, and it is keyed. You can only put it one way, and it will basically go straight into there like that, and that's the power out. And then we're actually going to cut these off the end there because they won't fit onto this, they're too big, but we're going to cut those off, connect these fork connectors, but we're not going to put them onto the end here because I want to extend the cable. And so I went to my local electrics place, got 3 meters of 12 AWG, and we are going to then put this Deutsch plug on it so that this power supply unit can be down in the motion sim rig in the base, which has no motion, and then a quick connector. So we'll have a meter of cable coming from the VPforce Rhino Monster, and we can very easily disconnect or reconnect it. So let's work on getting all of this stuff connected up. Okay, so we're just going to snip these ends off here. You don't really need to extend the cable if you don't have a motion rig, or even if you do have a motion rig but you want to mount it all within that platform, that's perfectly fine. But you can buy these online longer, so just keep that in mind. I got the meter, yeah, my one here is 1 meter long, and I got that specifically because I knew that I was going to be making this modification to it, but you can get these with a longer length, so you can certainly buy that to your liking. What we're going to do here is put the Deutsch connector in between it to make it a easy quick connect. But if all you're doing is getting the power unit set up for your VPforce Monster, you can simply skip all that extra stuff and just crimp onto here a couple of those, I guess we'll call them fork connectors, in the ignorance of me knowing what they are. And you'll be pretty much good to go with the rocker switch and the other parts. But we're going to do the Deutsch connector so you can skip forward if you don't need to do this bit. So we'll get our cable stripper, and I'm just going to strip that off there. There's pretty much, I guess you've got male and female plug sides. So it's going to be 2 males, 2 females. And I'll show you what I mean. So this one here is going to have the males to it. So we're going to put the male end to the non-live end, and we'll put the female end to the live end, just so that if this was connected, although it's only 24 volt, you don't accidentally touch those pins and have anything go wrong. So we will get this at the ready. See how well I can slide that on there. There we go, you'll get most of it. So we got most of it. And look, most is enough for what we're doing here. If you needed the voltages to be absolute, then you might want to think again, but that is pretty good. And then with these little loose ends here, we can just trim those off afterwards. So we'll do them both at once. Oh gosh, look at that, we got nearly the whole thing. Oh no, we got a few at the end there. Get that in. There we go, she's crimped. Okay, and we'll give that a quick trim. Okay, that side's done. Now we'll do the other side. So we'll quickly give these a cable strip. Puts a really good crimp and bites down on it. You can see how it sort of pinches it from all four sides. So it's a really, really good connection. This is going to be the female plug. But before we do that, I want to put some of this sheathing on it. I'll show you how this sheathing works because we really want to feed this onto the cable first. So with this stuff here, basically push down on it. You can see how it expands and you can see how it increases the size of it there, like that. So what we'll do, okay, and you can see how it wants to feed over it. So this is going to take a little while. Oh boy, that took forever, but there we go. We've got the sheathing on the cable now, and we can pop this into the first plug. So we are going to be in this one here. We'll pretty much pop them in like that. There we go. And I'm not sure if you'll be able to see that in the plug there, but they have clipped in. Okay, there's this little orange piece here, and that basically slides into there and keeps those plugs in position, and we'll line them up nicely. So we'll do the next one, and then we'll connect them together. Okay, so we just need to make sure that we are connecting this in the same direction that they will run. So we're going to feed that into there, push those through. Okay, so I've tidied up a little bit and we'll finish off the ends of the cable that we've made. So the last little bit is the heat shrink. I've actually cut the sheath back a little bit and I've just melted that slightly. Now, really, I should have put the heat shrink on first. I do this all the time. I'm not an auto electrician, and yeah, I always forget to put the heat shrink on. So do yourselves a favor, put the heat shrink on first. Here's a little trick. If you are struggling to get the heat shrink on like I am because you've already crimped and terminated all your ends, bit of the heat shrink here. I just get my long nose pliers and just give that a little bit of a stretch. So I'm sure anyone watching this who has any electrical knowledge is thinking, my goodness, but there you go. That's how you do it at Limitless VR and Sim Rigs. So then we should be able to just slide that over there, a little bit of massaging, and it should actually go past that. And there we go. We've got it past. So then we can marry that up quite nicely to that part there. Now, again, I just use a cigarette lighter for this. We use it for lighting candles in the house and the barbecue. But if you've got a heat gun, that would make life a lot easier. And we'll do the same to the other end here. We've already got the heat shrink on. We'll give that a quick hit with the lighter and that will shrink it down. Okay, so we've got all of the ends heat shrunk now, except for the last end that we're going to terminate with the little tiny fork connectors or terminals. Now, at the beginning of the video, I showed the red ones. They're actually the wrong size for 12 AWG cable. So I popped back down to the shops and I've got the blue type. And if we actually look at the PSU, we need them to be that small so that they can actually fit in there and connect to those terminals. So I don't forget this time, a little bit of heat shrink. Now what I have done to help get those over the ends is I've done my nifty little trick with the pointy nose pliers. So I just put that in there, give a little bit of a stretch so that we know that'll go over the end, and I've given that one a stretch as well. And let's put the heat shrink on this time so we don't forget. Okay, that one's on. We'll give that a quick crimp. Okay, next terminal, bit of heat shrink. All right, same again. Hit it with the lighter. There we go. They're looking pretty good. All done. So we can put the last piece on, which is this heat shrink here. What this heat shrink also helps do for this sheathing is it stops it from fraying any further or being able to pull back down. So that's a really good way just to finish off the cabling there. But we don't want to go too far on this one because if we go too far up, we won't have enough flexibility on these to maneuver those where we want. So I'll just bring that back a little bit, probably about there. That should give us the flexibility we want. We'll hit that with the lighter one more time. There we go. All ends are terminated, heat shrunk, and with the sheathing on it, and that's going to give us a really good cable. I like the aesthetic as well, but if the cable is rubbing on anything, it's just giving it a little bit of extra protection for wear. And with these Deutsch connectors, we've got a really, really good solid plug connection that is just virtually impossible to come apart, so we don't have any failures while we're gaming. All right, now let's move this cable to the side. It's now time to focus on connecting everything up to the power pack. So we'll get our little 3D printed protective cover, get these little screws out, So it's pretty clearly labeled here. You can actually see on the top of this, and I'll show you just there what all the connections need to be. So for our rocker switch, we're pretty much connecting the ground and then positive and negative to here. They're in the wrong order, of course. I think yellow is our ground, and then we've got our negative and then live. Then for our connection here, we've pretty much got up to what looks like 3 different outlets. We've got 3 negatives and we've got 3 positives. So that's pretty cool. I guess you can use this to be powering multiple devices, although we're just using it to power the one. Now, everything's going to be feeding through this here. Yeah, we'll just make sure that we've done all of this properly. So we're going to want that to feed through this little opening here. And again, with this shielding, look at that. Everything just fits really nice. So really happy with the sheathing, the 3D print there, and the heat shrink. It just all marries up really nice. And then with our rocker switch, we've got everything nicely protected and out of the way. So just get all that through. Yeah. All right, we'll just give that a little tiny tighten up. Great, and that's all installed and ready to go. We've just got to do the wiring now. So we'll actually get, okay, we're going to go positive. Okay, so we've now got our positive. Hit that down. We've got our negative. And we've got our earth. There we go. And that's everything connected for the little power supply. So now we can just sort of coil this up nicely, shimmy this down, and there we go. That's really nice. So we've got a nice bit of heat shrink there. It's really well protected. It's not quite strain relief, but it's definitely giving it a bit of protection. And then we can put the little tiny screws in on either side. Okay, that's the first one. Line up the second one. And there we go. How good does that look? I'm stoked. I mean, I'm not an auto sparky. I just like doing hobby sort of stuff, and I'm really happy with the way that's been finished. The only thing I will do is just trim this little bit off here, but I'd had a thought. Maybe I might put some little rubber feet on this just to raise it up off the metal base that it's going to go into at the bottom of the 6DOF simulator. Then I don't need to trim that off, but you could. You could just get a Dremel out and just trim that off there, or a little hacksaw, bit of sandpaper, and tidy that up so that you don't have that, just that little tiny piece there sort of hanging over. All right, here we are. It's all assembled and ready to go, but I thought we would quickly compare the pair. This one here is the original VPforce Rhino. What number am I? I am number 559. They come with a little serial plaque on the side, which is super cool. And you can already see the difference in size. Now, interestingly, the VPforce Rhino Monster is taller. It's the same width, but it is actually longer. Now, I originally thought that the base would fit the Monster mount, and it will to a degree. And I'll show you what I've come up with as a mounting option if you do have the Monster mounting plate or you're thinking of getting it. You could obviously extend it or get one custom cut, but I'll show you how that matters for bolting that up. So first things first, let's actually have a look at the height between the two tops of the joysticks here. And you can see there, if I use my ruler, we're just a couple of millimeters out. So it's almost the same height, which is really cool, because if you've got a sim rig already and you're wanting to upgrade to this, you know that it'll pretty much be a straight swap, except for this top section here. The cogs themselves are almost identical. And I think the benefit is if you're going to the 74 tooth cog, it's not recommended on this particular axis here. It's probably more so to this axis here. So if you're trying to bring your seat in nice and close, you shouldn't really foul against anything there. Height-wise, very similar. We'll run the ruler over everything in a minute. But what's really important is the distance from the top of the mount to the base of the gimbal internally. The shorter you can make that, it's levers and fulcrum. So the longer that is, the less force you're going to feel through the stick. So it's all about trying to get your stick as low as possible, but still being able to maintain the correct position in the cockpit. So let's run the ruler over things real quick. So if we put that there, and I'll press it down into this towel so that we're getting as accurate a measurement as we can. So if we look there, we're at 180 centimeters. to the top here. And we're at, gosh, what's that measurement there? We are at, oh gosh, we're just shy of 205. And what's that in inches? So we had 180 is 7, so 7 inches, and 205 is, gosh, 8 inches. So from there to there, they're your two measurements. Now let's jump over to the Monster. So the Monster is, wow, yeah, on 200 at that point there, and 200 is just shy of 8 inches. And to this point up here, we are coming in at, oh gosh, almost 225, and 225 in inches is just below 6 inches. So yeah, quite a sizable increase in height. The measurement for the width is coming in at 130, and 130 is just on 5 inches. And you can see there we are bang on identical. So width is the same. However, the length of these things, if we actually position that back like that, you can actually see they are much different when it comes to length. So the original VPforce Rhino, we are coming in at, what's that, 190 to 220. So 190 is 7 inches. Oh no, 190 is 7.5 inches, and 220 is 8.5 inches. So yeah, a considerable difference in the length of these bases. Now let's have a look at the belt. And if we have a look that way there, gosh, you can really see the belt thickness. So quite a sizable difference there. That belt's a little bit loose, so I don't need to adjust that. And then if we are upgrading the cog, I'll spin this back around so you can see both side cogs. That is really stepping it up in size. So there we have it. They're the dimensions for the two different bases. Okay, now we're going to weigh the OG VPforce Rhino and see if we can get a measure on this. Okay, coming in at 4.6 kilos. And now for the VPforce Rhino Monster. Woo. Yep, she is a heavy base. Right, let's get this into the sim rig, and we're going to go through programming the software and then testing out the actual forces we can get from this base. All right, first order of business, we've got the base bolted in, we've done our tests, and everything is powered up. You'll notice that it is much smoother now that we've got everything powered up, and I'll show you the notching that I showed on assembly, and you can see how notchy that is. That is when the motors are off, they are really, really notched. And the minute that it gets powered up, the magic behind the VPforce Rhino and what Walmers has done is how he's managed to completely smooth those motors out. So really, really is quite incredible. Now we're going to do two different force tests once we get everything set up. We'll be testing from this low point here. We'll also be testing from this midpoint here, which is around roughly where my palm is pulling from. So let's go through the initial stages of getting the software and the firmware all updated. We're on the VPforce Controls website. This is where you can reserve the Rhino, order kits, the motors that I've ordered and the motherboard came from this site. All of this will be linked in the description, but also the Rhino Force Feedback's firmware update software and the desktop software and manual. So we will click on this here, and I'll just disconnect the stick. But on first connection, you click the connect button, and if your stick is detected, you can highlight and then click connect. And then you can actually start testing out if the stick's working or not. You'll notice the little pink dot moving around is not centered. We'll go through how to fix all of that shortly. But this really lets us know everything's working. If you do have a firmware version upgrade, you will have this button clickable. I have already updated the motherboard inside of this, or the circuit board, so there's nothing to be updated. And this is where we get the software for the computer. If you've upgraded from the VPforce Rhino, the OG base, make sure you're on the latest desktop software as well. But if this is your first time, grab that and you should be good to go. User manuals there as well, handy to have a read of. So we can now jump out of here. We can open up the VPforce configurator, and this is pretty much where we can configure everything. Now, initially, it's a little daunting looking at all these settings, but there's only a few things we're going to configure here, and I'll step us through all of it. First off is the max motor current and the max PSU current. Now, if you hover over this information box, it'll tell you, and you can see the 3 different motors. We are running the 86BL FO4s, and all of these motors can be safely driven at 30 amps. So we're going to punch in 30 for there. And then the max PSU current. Winger has confirmed for me, we're pretty sure the Meanwell power supply that I'm running can support 14.7 amps. So basically we're going to set that to 14 to give it plenty of headroom, and then we should be good to go. So we'll go 1.4 there. And we can click apply to those settings. All right. We will store those settings at the very end. But now we need to get the X and Y axis configured. So easiest way for this is to click on the auto calibrate. And it will tell us here, before starting calibration, master gain will be set to 0. So if you had a previous force feedback base from VPforce, it would have set that to 0. And once calibration starts, move the X and Y axis to full minimum and maximum deflection. Okay. To undo, uncheck the auto calibrate and click read configuration. But to confirm the new calibration, uncheck auto calibrate, the button, and click store configuration. So we'll click OK to that. We're going to move the stick up and down, left and right, make sure it's all happy. And we will then untick auto calibrate and we will click apply settings. And there we go. We can see that the little purple dot has pretty much moved into the center. However, if we go up and down, it's going side to side. And if we go left and right, it's going up and down. So we actually need to swap the X and Y axis around. You've got a 50% chance of getting it right. When you plug the motors in on the motherboard, depending on which one goes where, you might get lucky. So we can just click swap and then we click apply. But if you notice, our calibration is out again. So we now need to click auto calibrate one more time. We'll click OK, move the stick left and right, up and down, and then we'll take it off auto calibrate. We'll click apply. The dot has gone back to the middle, and look at that, left and right is doing what we want. However, up and down is not. So we just need to very easily invert the axis. You don't need to recalibrate when you're just inverting the axis here, but you do when you're doing this swap because it throws it off center. So we'll click apply and let's have a look. Look at that. We have calibrated our XY axis, and it really is that simple to get that set up. Now we can configure the little rotary dials. So these 2 little dials here, we can configure those to whatever we want out of these options here. But I'm going to set it to master gain for pot 1 and spring gain for pot 2, but you've got all of those different options that you could tune it to. And we can see those little dials. If we turn them, they are rotating. We'll click apply there. Now we can also configure the buttons and what we want them to do on our stick, but we need to pick the correct stick. So if we click on grip type here, you can see we've got all these different grips that it will be compatible with and have all the settings fully functioning. So I've been asked by some of the viewers, are certain sticks going to have all their functionality? The answer is yes, if they're from this list here. So we can click the VPC Warbird, which is what I'm running, and we'll click apply. You could obviously click apply right at the end, but it's just my thing to always click apply. Okay, so we're starting to look good there. Then we will go up to master gain, and we're going to move that all the way to 100 because I want all the force. Periodic effects, I'm really marrying up what I've had on my previous VPforce Rhino stick. So I had that set at 50, but this will just govern the effects that you're going to feel through the stick from certain effects. Spring force, I want that at 100%. Damper, I had that set at 7 previously. And they're all looking good. We'll click apply there. Then we'll go to effects. So spring, I have this set at 100. And that's 100 for everything. You can tune these independently if you want by unlinking the XY axis, but for me, I want all of those at 100, plus I want the adaptive recentering. That's so that the stick will actually spring back into the center. And then for damper, I want that set at 100. I want inertia also at 100. And I want friction set at 20. There we go. These other options here, we're not going to deep dive into for this video, but I am curious on the H shifter. That's pretty cool, where you can actually use the base as a H shift stick and feel that cogging as it's, well, not cogging, but it engaging into those different gear shifts. So once we've got all that set, we'll click apply. And really the last bit to check before we get into anything is the fans. And the way you can actually test that the fans are working before we put it under any load is click on the debug tab, navigate down to test fans, and yep, I can hear the fans have kicked in. Now, I'd already tested the fans after assembly, and you can just make sure that they're actually working before you get too much further. But before you start putting this under any load, just make sure that the fans are working. So we'll turn the fans off, and we have got everything set. We are ready to start testing the force on this stick. So the very first test that we'll put it through is actually around the midpoint of the grip. Okay, where I've got that ring is about the center point of my grip. Now, I'm not pulling with my index finger. This Warbird has a trigger there, and it's really these three fingers that wrap around the grip that are going to be pulling on the stick. So this center point here is a good, I think, gauge of the force that we could reliably feel when we're flying. So here we go. This is going to be the 1 minute pull test. We've got it set in kilograms. In 3, 2, 1, go. Okay, so we're just off the bump stop there. So we're at 4.4. 4.4. Okay, and we're at 50 degrees. The fans have kicked in and we're holding. And we're holding at 4.4. 51 degrees. We're at 45 seconds. We're at 44 still. We're at 4.4 still. 52 degrees and holding. We're at a minute. Whew. So I'm going to call that a 4.4 kilograms of force at its maximum settings with a 50 millimeter extension and the midway of the stick. That is impressive. Now let's move this ring down to the low part of the stick, which will give you an accurate representation of force if you had your stick mounted directly onto the base. Okay, and we're going for the second pull test. We've got the ring down at the base of the stick, and that is removing pretty much this 50 millimeter extension so we can get an accurate feel of what it would be like if you had your stick mounted directly to the base itself. So here we go in 3, 2, 1. We're just off the bump stop there. My gosh, we're at 7 point. Oh gosh, I'm struggling to hold that. Yeah, 7.3 kilograms, I reckon. 7.3, we're at 21 seconds. Temperature is 54 degrees. Wow, that is hard to hang on to. 7.3, 35 seconds, 55 degrees and holding. Oh man, I'm starting to shake. 46, 48, 50 seconds, We're still at 7.3. Temperature's gone up a degree. Oh my goodness. Whew, that is hard work. There you have it. My gosh, 7.3 kilograms. I'll put up on the screen what that is in pounds, but that is impressive for the testing so far from this base. I hope you enjoyed the video. Man, that was really cool. I really had a lot of fun assembling that base. It's the first time I've actually pulled one of the bases apart and seen inside it. So the fact that I was able to assemble that, build it, really gave me a good feeling of confidence if anything ever happened down the track, of being able to fix it myself. And for anyone on the fence about these bases, maybe you're looking at the DIY plans and thinking it's just a bit too much, or you've looked at the standard VPforce Rhino but really like to have a go at building one yourself and want a bit of extra power, this could definitely be the base for you. I'll see you in the next video.